that you should. Okay, I thought you were recording. No, so Ike's recording. Okay. So 2 Kings 19:29, this shall be a sign to you. The first thing you're told there is that it's a sign, which means it's a Sabbath. Some sort of Sabbath is about to be shown to you. You shall eat this year such things as grow of themselves, and in the second year that which springs up of the same. And in the third year sow and reap and plant vineyards and eat the fruits of them. So I always ask everybody, what is this talking about? What does that mean? Right? Yeah, okay. So what does it mean? This year you shall eat of what grows of itself. That happens to be a sabbatical year. And in the second year, that which springs up of the same. That is also another sabbatical year. And then the third year, sow and reap and plant vineyards and eat the fruits of them. So now you've got 2 sabbatical years back to back, and the third year you can go plant and reap. So the only time that you have 2 sabbatical years back to back is when it's a 49th and a 50th year. So this year happens to be one of the most documented years in history. It's 701 BC. So 701 BC is the first part. You shall eat this year such things as grow of themselves. And in the second year, which is 700 BC, that is the Jubilee year. And once you know what this is, a 49th and a 50th year, you can count by 7 from 701 BC and hit every sabbatical and Jubilee year going forward and backward in time. Okay, I need somebody to mute their mic. So going forward and backward in time by 7, you will hit every sabbatical year throughout history. If you count by 49s from the year 700, you will hit every sabbatical and Jubilee year, every Jubilee year going forward and backward in time. That brings us down to 1996, which was the last Jubilee year. The next Jubilee year is 2045. Now, the reason that we know this date is because in Sennacherib, he wrote this stele here. He has 3 of them. And he talks about the way he caged up Hezekiah during the battle or the siege of Jerusalem. He didn't defeat him. Hezekiah went and prayed, and Hezekiah went and received a message from God, and Jeremiah or Isaiah brought it back to him, and he told him, here's a message from God, and here's what you're supposed to know. Know and understand that this year you'll eat what grows of itself, and next year shall be the same. So that's a coded message. But Sennacherib goes and records that he still defeated Hezekiah. There's only 2 dates in history when this occurs that we are able to locate the Israelite kings alongside a known chronology, which is the Assyrian chronology. And that was 701 BC and 700 AD. So 700 BC, without that year, we wouldn't know when the Israelite kings reigned. The other one is the Battle of Karkar in 853. And again, without that date, we need both these dates to know when the Israelite kings reigned. And here's the inscription of the Battle of Karkar. So 853 BC. If it wasn't for these 2 dates, you wouldn't know when any kings of Israel reigned. That's the bottom line. So we need these 2 dates, and the Battle of Sennacherib in 701 BC is the one that's most important to us because we're trying to determine when the sabbatical and Jubilee years are. So I've now got 89 sabbatical years. 2 of them are Jubilees. Actually, 4 of them are now Jubilees. And I have the most extensive collection in all the world. So in order to prove what I'm saying wrong, you must now prove all 100 or all 89 sabbatical and Jubilee years wrong. Nobody can. people don't like what I teach, they just discredit me, but they can't prove these things wrong. So that's important to know. Here are some of those sabbatical dates. 8 BC, 28 AD, when Yeshua said this is the acceptable year. It's not a Jubilee year, it's a shemitah year. 56 AD, the note of indebtedness during the Emperor Nero, sorry, not Zero. When the temple was destroyed in 70 AD, the Bar Kokhba revolt in 133, 134. Again, with that one, we also know about 140. All these dates you have to prove wrong. Now, we also have a number of tombstones, and this is one example. This is the tombstone of Hannah, daughter of Hananiel, the priest who died on the Sabbath, the first festival of Passover, on the 15th day. So right there is telling you the Passover is on the 15th, not the 14th. 15th day of the month of Nisan, in the 5th year of the sabbatical cycle, which is the year 369 years after the destruction of the temple. So if we look at this, it's the year 439, right? 369 plus 70 is 439. And we come up here. I don't know if you can see my mouse. Can you see my mouse, Nathan? Yeah. So 439 is the 5th year, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th year of the sabbatical cycle, exactly as the tombstone says. And we can go get the date and double check all the numbers in it, and it proves to be exactly correct. So this is another thing that you have to prove wrong. Here's another tombstone, and it says, "May the soul of Hasadiah, the priest, son of Demeton, rest, who died on Thursday, the 5th of Av, in the 4th year of the sabbatical cycle, which is the year 445 after the destruction of the temple." So 445 plus 70 gives you the year 515. So 515 is 1, 2, 3, 4th year. 4th year, which is year 4, or 4th year of the sabbatical cycle, exactly as it says. Again, I'm just showing, these are just two examples of the tombstones. We got about 60 of them. All of them line up with each other. All of them match. Now, we also have Rambam. He wrote the Mishnah Torah, and in it, the year of the Shemitah is known. He said this: the year of the Shemitah is known and famous among the Genome and the people of the land of Israel. They all counted only the years of the destruction in multiples of 7. According to this calculation, this year, which is 1107, year of destruction, is the year following a Shemitah. We rely on this, and we teach this calculation for matters of tithes, produce, and loans. Tradition and precedent, maaseh, are great pillars in instruction, and it's appropriate to rely on them. But we, by tradition, which he goes on to say, we, by tradition, keep it a year and a half before, which is exactly what they do today. So Rambam confirms exactly what I'm saying, that this year is the year after a Shemitah, which is amazing. There it is, the year 1177. The Shemitah year is 1176. Rambam, one of the greatest sages in Jewish eschatology, who wrote the Mishnah, confirms what I'm saying. And I have it written here in Hebrew, just in case anyone thinks I might have changed what he said. He edited his own book, and he has now proven what I'm saying to be true. So that's amazing. So we know 701 BC is a sabbatical year. There is no questions about it. We know that 700 BC is a Jubilee year. What we don't know is where we are in the Jubilee cycles, which one we're in. So that's why we have to go to Genesis 6:3. And it says, "And Jehovah said, my spirit shall not always strive with man in his erring, he is flesh. His days shall be 120 years. The word years is shana. It's a revolution of time. In Tagalog, that's teon. I know you all want to say taon, but it's teon for us English-speaking people. Okay? Taon. It's a revolution of time, not a year. It could be a month. It can be a week. It can be a year. It can be a Jubilee cycle. It's a revolution of time. So Genesis 6:3 is actually telling us that Jehovah is going to give us 120 cycles of time. And I'm just saying that's 120 cycles is a 120 Jubilee cycles, which is what Christians already say when they take 120 and multiply it by 50. So we're saying the same thing. We're just using a different number. And it's not for 120 years for Noah to preach. Noah's mentioned 4 verses later. What this verse is saying is that mankind has 120 cycles of time. So when we look at that, we start counting from Adam. We just do the chronology, and we know that Adam, in the day that he died, wasn't the day he died. It was 930 years after he ate, of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So the millennial day is 980 days long. That's 20 Jubilee cycles times 49. 20 times 49. And Adam died 1 Jubilee cycle before the end of the millennial day, just as God said he would, for breaking his commandment. So using 2 Kings 19:29, we can count all 120 Jubilee cycles since the creation of Adam. When we do that, which I explained in the 2016 book, we end up with the 2045 as the 120th Jubilee cycle. Somebody needs to mute the mic, please. So 120 Jubilee cycles times 49 is 5,880 years. That 5,880 years on the right-hand side is counting from Adam. On the left-hand side of these charts that we're looking at, we're going to be using the left side mostly. These are Gregorian years on the left-hand side, and that's why we need the 2 Kings 19:29 in order to make all this work. 5880 after the creation of Adam is equivalent to our year of 2044. We're at the year 2023 right now.
Salamat ka't wala kami talagang ginagawa eh.
I can't see anything. I can't do anything when I'm PowerPointing. So I need someone else to host and take care of that. So we're in the year 2023 right now. We have 21 years until the 7th millennium begins. 21 years. So we now have been able to prove that all 120 Jubilee cycles fit in the chronology of mankind, including Genesis up to the building of the temple with Solomon, and from Solomon down to our time now. We now have that chronology, and nobody can prove these Jubilee cycles wrong.
Joe?
Yes, sir.
I think we need to understand, or everybody must understand, because not all understand how the Jubilee and the sabbatical years work. So I think how does that? How can people today figure it out? What is a sabbatical and a Jubilee cycle?
How can the people figure out a sabbatical and Jubilee year?
Yes.
It's 2 Kings 19:29. When you go to 2 Kings 19:29, you can count every sabbatical year, which is, that year is 701 BC. You can count every sabbatical year from that date. That's why it's such an important date. From the year 700.
Yeah, because numbers is very important here. So some of us do not understand how the biblical calendar works, how it begins. So we remember that in the day of creations, the Lord created the entire universe in 7 days. And then that's the familiar thing, or what we call patterns that are clear in the scriptures. The number 7, it was created in 7 days. And then we see in the Bible, 7, that makes 7 weeks, means Pentecost, and then 7 years, and then 7 times 7 to a Jubilee year, and to a 7 a millennial year. So can you briefly?
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, with regards to how all of us will be able to figure out what does it mean to be what are the patterns that talks
Okay,
about that talks
let
about
me,
so that everybody could understand how does the Jubilee cycles work. So how can we figure it out?
yeah, I'm just switching charts here. No, not that one.
Okay.
So usually when we're doing this, Alvin interrupts me about this time, but he has a big banner behind him. And
Yeah.
today he does not have the banner. So I'll just give him a banner here.
Yeah. Okay.
If you go to my website, you can get this. You just go to archives and go to charts, and you can have this banner. Can you see that, Nathan?
Okay. You see it?
Okay. So here we are. We're talking about 2 Kings 1929 right here in 701 BC. Now, if you count by 7, that's 708, 715, 722, 729. It keeps going back year by year by year until we get all the way back to down here, 3788, 3795. And that is equivalent to what's on the right-hand side of the green bar here, which is 49, 42, 35, 28, 21, 14, and 7. And Adam is created on day 1. So the day that Adam was created in Gregorian years is 3836 BC. All you got to do is count by 7. 7, 7, 7, 7. And when you do that, you will end up lining up with the 701 BC date. And that, again, you know, here's Adam in the day that he died, 930, which is equal to 2907 BC. 930 after the creation of Adam is equal to, so the one on the right is equivalent to the left side. That's the only thing that's difficult for some people to grasp. The right side is the same as the left side. But Adam died in the millennial day that he ate of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So we are, if you count the millennial days, 20 of them, 20 Jubilee cycles makes up one millennial day. So a second millennial day would be 40 Jubilee cycles. The third millennial day will be another 20, which will bring us down to 60. Then the fourth millennial day, which I have in purple here, will bring you down to 80. The fifth millennial day in orange comes all the way down to 100. And then the 120th millennial day, or the sixth millennial day, which is 120 Jubilee cycles, is right here. That is the end of this Jubilee cycle, which will end at the end of 2044 and the beginning of 2045. Now, so if we understand 2 Kings 1929, you can understand all of this. All you got to do is count by 7. 7, 7, 7. So these patterns of 7 are throughout the Bible. It's really that simple. Now, when we're doing this in person, we have a great big banner that we use, and you can see all of time in one place. I can point at Adam, and I can point at our day, and you can see all 120 Jubilees all in one shot. And the 5,880 years is counting from Adam here. So right here, so 49 times 120 is 5,880 years. And that brings you to the very end here of this Jubilee cycle. That 5,880 years is equal to the year 2044. Again, we are in the year 2023. We have 21 years until the end of this Jubilee cycle. But Yeshua said that unless those days were cut short, no flesh will be saved alive. So those days being cut short, and what I've been able to prove is that they'll be cut short by 12 years. That brings you to 2033. So that's, that's just about it in a nutshell. Again, if you, 2 Kings 19:29, right, where is it? Right here. That's the key to understanding all of this. The Assyrians recorded that date, and their chronology proves to be 701 BC. That gives you the next year that you don't plant and don't harvest as a Jubilee year, which is 700 BC. And from that, those 2 dates alone, counted by 7s or 49s, you can hit every sabbatical Jubilee year throughout history. Alvin, is there anything else you want me to cover on that? Because otherwise we got to jump to the next level.
I think that's okay. Okay.
Okay.
So if there are any other questions, you may want to ask that later. Any clarification?
Do you want to ask a question now about this section? Because it's going to get we're going from kindergarten to grade 12.
Yeah. Any questions? Anyone? You may want to ask now with regards to the reckoning of time. How do we really understand the sabbatical years and Jubilee cycles? Because it's the only way to understand prophecies, understanding the Jubilee cycles. So anybody would like to ask questions, you're free to do that now before we move to the next section. None? Okay.
Okay. Onward and upward. Okay, so 120 times 49 equals 5,880 years. And that's equivalent to the year 2044. We've gone through that, explained that. Now, so in the middle bar there, we have the number 70. And below it, we have the number 69. So we're now about to explain that. And in order to understand this, you must now jump into the Daniel's 9:24. 70 weeks are decreed for your people. So, first of all, who are Daniel's people? I don't explain this in my presentation, so I'll just take a minute to explain it now. If you haven't got this book, you need to get the book. It's called Missing Links Discovered by Raymond Kapp. It's taken the cuneiform tablets of Assyria and translated them into English so that we can now know who they are talking about in those tablets. Within 150 years, the names of the house of Israel changes. They go from being called the Bet Omri in the year 723, and then they become captives of the Assyrians who could not say Omri, so they called them the Bet Kumri. Bet Kumri. And then Tiglath-Pileser recorded the Kumri as the Gomeri. Sargon also called them the Gomeri, and then he changed them to the Gimeri in 704 BC. And Esarhaddon called them the Gemera and the Gimera. And then he changed the hard G to a hard C, calling them Gemera. And 699 or 669 BC, the Cimmerians are now known as the Cimmerians. And Cimmerians are well known to be the Celtic people. This takes place, as you can see, in such a short period of time. I always say 150, but it's actually less than that. It's just amazing how the names change. Now, this is recorded on the Behistun rock in Iran. This rock is still there. They just restored it. It's in 4 different languages. The guy here with the toque on his head, he's a Sakan. He's Kunka, the Sakan or Scythian. A Saka. He's the sons of Isaac. The Sak sons is where we get the name from. So we explain all this in our book, The 2300 Days of Hell. That's the first 250 pages in the book. It's a very intense reading. I did not pull any punches. I did not make it reader friendly. I just said, here's all the facts. deal with it. So, yeah, I can mention this. Okay, so right now, last year, the year 2022 is the year 5858 after the creation. 5782 is what the Jewish year is called, and then it's 5783 at Rosh Hashanah last year. So we got 76 years difference between their calendar and mine. And people are asking why. And the answer is right here in Matthew 1, verse 8. There are 4 kings missing. These 4 kings, this Azariah was also called Uzziah in 2 Kings 15:13, and is Ozias in Matthew 1:8. So here are the reigns of each of these 4 kings again. Ahaziah, who reigned for 1 year, Athaliah reigned for 6 years, Joash reigned for 40 years, and Amaziah reigned for 29 years. These 4 kings have been blotted out of Matthew 1:8. They're not there. The total adds up to be 76 years. Now, Deuteronomy 29:20 tells us where Jehovah threatened to blot out the names of those who served other gods. And in Exodus 20, verse 5, it says that sins of the people will be visited to the 3rd and 4th generations of those who hate them. Now, we've never seen that done in the Bible until we understand Matthew 1:8. And these kings are indeed blotted out. So Daniel's people are all 12 tribes of Israel. The 70 weeks is now the next thing we got to answer. 70 weeks are decreed for your people. The 70 weeks, the word weeks is the word in Hebrew, Shabuah. 70 Shabuah are decreed for your people. Now we got to figure out what that word Shabuah is. And there's no need for anyone to tell you what it means. You can look it up by just looking at the scriptures where that word is used. So we're going to look at each word or each scripture to understand what is the meaning of this word. And the word actually means the Feast of Weeks, right? Shabuah is weeks. It's the Feast of Weeks. So in Exodus 34:22, you shall observe the Feast of Weeks. You shall observe the Feast of Shabuah. Deuteronomy 16:10, and you shall keep the Feast of Shabuah to Jehovah your God. So you're to keep the Feast of Weeks, the Feast of Pentecost. Deuteronomy 16:16, 3 times in a year shall all your males appear before Jehovah your God in the place which he shall choose. In the Feast of Unleavened Bread, that's Passover season. And in the Feast of Weeks, Feast of Shabuah, that's Shavuot or Pentecost. And in the Feast of Tabernacles, that's Sukkot, right? So now you got 3 definitions of this when you're supposed to go see God. And one of them is the Feast of Weeks, the Feast of Shabuah, which we are trying to understand. And here it is again in Daniel 9:26. And after 62 Shabuah, after 62 Feasts of Shabuah, after 62 Feasts of Weeks is what you're being told. So the Feast of Weeks is found in Leviticus 23. And when you count to you from the next day after the Sabbath, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be complete. To the next day after the 7th Sabbath, you shall number 50 days, and you shall offer a new food offering to Jehovah. That is called the Feast of Weeks. That's Pentecost Sunday. So the Feast of Weeks is 7 Sabbaths for a total of 49 days. Shavuot is the Sunday after the 49th day. It is Pentecost Sunday. So Daniel 9:24 was hidden and sealed until the last days. We're definitely in the last days, and his prophecy has only been able to be understood in these last days by understanding the Jubilee cycles. 70 Shabuah, 70 weeks, 70 49s are decreed for your people. 70 Shabuah equals 70 weeks, and 70 weeks is 49 days, or 70 times 49. 70 Jubilee cycles is 70 times 49, or 3,430 years. Most people believe this is talking about Jesus, and they take it to be the 70 times 7 to get 490 years. Trouble is, the only two people to use that prophecy was the Maccabees in 162 BC to prove that John Hyrcanus was the Messiah. And then the 133 AD, when Rabbi Akiva used it to prove that Simon Bar Kokhba was the Messiah. In between those two dates of 162 BC and 133 AD, not one of the apostles, nor Yeshua himself, used this prophecy to prove that he was the Messiah. After Simon Bar Kokhba, then the church fathers began to use it in 180 AD. Julius Africanus in 202 AD developed what is now known as the gap theory, where they take the Daniel 9 prophecy and have Yeshua start his ministry at or killed at 483 years. And then the last 7 years of this prophecy can miraculously appear somewhere in time. Nobody knows when. And that's just the way they figure it. But that's not chronology.
I ask a question? Because I was Christian. Good.
Yeah.
Who is Jesus to you?
What?
Who is Jesus to
No,
you?
we're not going there.
Who is Yeshua?
You're going to take me way off subject here. So let's just focus on the subject here, the 70 weeks, right? So Daniel 9:25 is the next verse in this Daniel 9 prophecy. Know therefore and understand. Know therefore. You're supposed to know, but we didn't because we're looking at the wrong interpretation of the prophecy. That from the going out of the command to restore and build Jerusalem. So when did Yeshua ever rebuild Jerusalem? He didn't. He may have been the son of a carpenter, but he was not a bricklayer or a road builder. So from the time of the going out of the command to restore and build Jerusalem to Messiah the Prince. The Messiah the Prince is what people believe to be Yeshua. They put a capital M in here. There are no capitals in Hebrew. It's Mashiach. The word Mashiach means anointed. So who is the anointed prince? That's the question. If I put oil on my head or oil on your head, you are now Mashiach. Does that make you or make me the Messiah? No, it does not. So if we read this properly, it says from the going forth of the command to restore and to build Jerusalem. Who was given that command? Let's start with that. Who was given that command? When we do the chronology from Adam, we will discover that after 50 Jubilee cycles, Moses was given the command to go and get the tribes of Israel. Right? How do we prove this? Well, let's just look. 50 plus 70 equals 120. So that kind of works, but that's not, that's too simple an answer. We need to prove this. How do we prove this? The going forth of the command. That's what we're looking for. The going forth of the command. Now I'm saying the going forth of the command is 1383 BC. 1379 BC, not 1450, not 1250, is when the Exodus took place. That is the year 2458 after the creation of Adam. And you can check it in the charts, or you can do your own chronology and you should be able to figure that out. So the going forth of the command is 1383 BC. And I say that because in the 10 plagues of Egypt, the cattle are destroyed 3 times. So each time the cattle are destroyed, they had to be replaced. They weren't replaced overnight. So I gave them each a year to be replaced. You don't have to agree with me on that. That's just my own theory. So what scriptures we have to back this up? Exodus 3:10. And now go, the going forth of the command by Jehovah to Moses. And now go, and I will send you. Right? So you notice up in the left-hand corner, I'm counting how many times this takes place. And he said, I will be with you, and this shall be a sign to you that I have sent you when you have brought forth the people out of Egypt. So that's the second time. Exodus 3:16. Go, and gathered the elders of Israel. That's the third time. Exodus 3:17. And I have said, I will bring you out of the affliction of Egypt to the land of the Canaanites. That's the fourth time. Exodus 3:18. And they said, where am I going here? And he shall say to him, Jehovah, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us, and now let us go. So this is God telling Moses to go and get the people, and Moses is objecting and not wanting to do it. Exodus 4:12. And now go, and I will be with you, with your mouth, and teach you what you shall say. Exodus 4:19. And Jehovah said to Moses in Midian, go, return to Egypt, for all the men who sought your life are dead. So 7 times God told Moses to go and get the people. 7 times. In Nehemiah, Ahasuerus or Xerxes or Cyrus, whoever you want to use, only told Nehemiah once that he could go. And depending on which theology you subscribe to, the year can be 455, 454, 453, or some other date. Again, depending on who you want to be the one that you choose. And that's the problem with this. Everyone keeps choosing different dates to make their theology work, instead of choosing God giving this commandment to Moses. So am I correct in this? Is this the right understanding? Again, that's the next question we got to ask. Know therefore and understand. So we're going to get the answer right here. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command. Now I'm saying that command is Jehovah speaking to Moses, who's going to tell somebody to go and restore and build Jerusalem. That person is Messiah the Prince. Now, again, that's Mashiach, right? I'm saying if you go to Ezekiel 34, verse 24, Ezekiel 34, 24, let me just pull that up here. I'll share my other screen here. Back to Zoom, share screen. Share screen, Ezekiel 34. Not wrong one. Ezekiel 34. Right here. And I, Jehovah, will be their God, and my servant David, a ruler among them. I have spoken. I, Jehovah, have spoken. So that's the modern King James. Let me get a different version for you. Let's try the ASV. My servant David, a prince among us. Now I have anointed, my anointed servant David. Trying to find that version. ESV. David shall be prince among them. So King David is who they're saying is the anointed prince. Okay. Again, I've given you 2 different things here now, and I'm muddying the waters. I'm saying that the command is from Jehovah God, and to restore and build Jerusalem to King David, who is the Messiah, the Prince. And how do we prove this? By the very next couple words, shall be 7 weeks, right? Shall be 7 weeks. So it's not Cyrus, it's not Darius, it's not Artaxerxes, it's not 453 or 455 or any date from any Persian king. This prophecy was first used by the Maccabees. It was then used by Rabbi Akiva, but it was never used by Yeshua or the apostles. It was then developed by Julius Africanus into what we now know as the gap theory that we now have today. So Yeshua never used it, nor the apostles. That's the key thing I keep saying, but that doesn't deter people. They still want to use it. So Messiah the Prince. Let's just see. Did I have the wrong verse? Now, so one shepherd over them, he shall feed them. Ezekiel 34:23. Even my servant David, he shall feed them, and he shall be their shepherd. And I, the Lord, will be their God, and my servant David, prince among them. I am the Lord, I have spoken. Jeremiah 30, verse 8, for it shall be in that day, says Jehovah of hosts, I will break his yoke from your neck and will burst your bonds, and the stranger shall no longer enslave him, but they shall serve Jehovah their God and David their king, whom I will raise up to them. This is talking about the last days, the days right in front of us. Ezekiel 23, nor shall they be defiled with their idols, even with their filthy idols, nor with all of their transgression, but I will save them out of their dwelling places, and in them where they sin, and will cleanse them. And they shall be to me for a people, and I will be to them for a God. And David, my servant, shall be king over them. And there shall be one shepherd to all of them. And they shall walk in my judgments and obey my laws and do them. And they shall dwell in the land that I have given to Jacob, my servant, and the land in which your fathers have lived. And they shall dwell in it, even they and their sons and the sons of their sons forever. And my servant David shall be their ruler forever. Hosea 3:4. For the sons of Israel shall live many days with no king and no ruler, and with no sacrifice and no pillars, and no ephod and teraphim. Afterwards the sons of Israel shall return and seek Jehovah their God and David their king. And they shall fear Jehovah and his goodness in the ends of days. Again, coming back to Daniel 9:25. Know therefore and understand that from the going out of the command to restore and to build Jerusalem to Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks. Messiah the Prince is King David. So again, how do we prove this? We count the 7 weeks. Now the word weeks is, again, the word Shabuah, right? So Shabuah is 7 times 49, which is 343 years after the Exodus. So if we count 343 years after the Exodus, we should see King David, right? So most apologetics, most Christians take the 62 and the 7, they put it together and you just count 69. Or they make the 62 first and then the 7 weeks at the end for the last 7 years of the Great Tribulation. And all they're doing is guessing because they don't know what they're doing. But that's not what it says. It says the 7 years are to be counted, or 7 Shabuah are to be counted first. So in our charts, we just start counting the 7 Shabuah, right? So here's the Exodus, 1383, or when Moses is at the burning bush, 1383. That's 1 Shabuah. And then we got 2, and then we got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 1383 minus 343 years brings us to the year 1040, the very year that King David was born. King David is who this is talking about. Exactly 7 Shabuah, 7 Jubilee cycles later. King David was anointed by Samuel somewhere in the 2nd sabbatical cycle as a shepherd boy. We don't know how old he was, but somewhere around that time. He's then anointed by Judah in 1010, when he becomes king over all of Israel. And then in 1003 BC, he's anointed over all of Israel, and 3 times he's anointed. So here we have the scriptures in 1 Samuel 16. Samuel took a horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brothers, and the Spirit of Jehovah came on David from that day forward. And Samuel rose up and went to Ramah. 2 Samuel 2:4, and the men of Judah came, and they anointed David king over the house of Judah there. And they told David, saying, the men of Jabesh Gilead buried Saul. 2 Samuel 5:3, and all the elders of Israel came to the king at Hebron, and King David made a covenant with them in Hebron before Jehovah. And they anointed David king over all of Israel. Now back to Daniel 9:25. Know therefore, now you know, now you understand that from the going forth of the command given by Jehovah to Moses to restore and to build Jerusalem, which King David did, he rebuilt the walls, the rampart, he rebuilt the Milo, he rebuilt the rampart, the Milo, and the tower, the Acra, which is the tower. David did that. From the going out of the command from Moses to Moses by Jehovah to build Jerusalem, which King David did, to Messiah the Prince, who is King David, shall be 7 Jubilee cycles or 7 Shabuah, and 62 Shabuah. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in times of affliction. The streets and the wall, that is the rampart. 62 Shabuah plus 7 gives you 69 Shabuah. That brings you to 1996, which leaves the 70th Shabuah, the 70th week of Daniel. That's the one we are in right now. Okay, so let me just stop there for a second. I've gone through this fairly quick. Anybody got any questions related to that? Yeah, you're all muted if you want to say something.
Any question regarding the counting? The 7 weeks plus 62 weeks. So 7 weeks means 7 times 49 years, because a week is equivalent to 1 Jubilee cycle. So 1 Jubilee cycle is equivalent to 49 years. So if it is talking about David, who will appear after 7 weeks, means that will be 49 years times 7 or 4 or 1 7 Jubilee cycles times 49 years plus 62 Jubilee cycles. That's how it is. So here today in the presentation, we are now since 1996. Am I right, Brother Joseph?
Yes, sir.
1996 is the end of the 69 weeks or 69 Jubilee cycles. Today, we are now on the 70th Jubilee cycles because the 69th week ended in 1996.
1996.
And today we are now in 2023. We are now in the middle of the 70th Jubilee cycle.
So in the chat, I've just given you the link so you can get all these charts that we're talking about. You can have them, download them, print them off, whatever you want to do with them. Keep them on your computer. You now have all the Jubilee charts right there.
Okay. Okay, go ahead. Continue.
Go ahead. Okay, so what I'm presenting to you here today is not normally the presentation I get to do, and it's not the one I've been doing here on this tour. It's a little bit more expanded, a little bit more details in it. But I hope you're grasping what we're doing. We're going quickly, right? So I hope you're able to keep up with us. Okay, so again, I've got 89 Sabbath Jubilee proofs. What am I doing here? Here is a free, what's that? Oh, yeah, here's if you want to take a screenshot of this. You can have this book. It's on our website for free. It's not my book, it's someone else's book. But they explain 12 of the Jubilee cycles, just 12. And that's all I needed to figure all this out. But it's yours if you want it. And again, we're talking about all 120 Jubilee cycles. It's hard to see in this chart. That's why we don't hardly use it in our demonstrations. But usually when Alvin and I are talking, we only get up to the second level. That's how big these charts are. Okay. Alvin, where do you want me? Do you want me to go to the curses or you want me to go to the abomination? How's your time?
It's 8:27. You can continue.
You want me to explain the curses?
Go ahead. It's 8:27. Still we have time.
Okay, so what happens if you don't keep the Sabbath and Jubilee years? Right? What's the punishment? What happens if you don't keep them? All these things are in the Old Testament. All these things happen to them as examples and is written for our warning on whom the ends of the world have come. The ends of the world are here now. Alvin, do you want something?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So everybody wants to claim how much blessings they have. I don't normally read them. I'll let you read them. I'm going to save a little bit of time here. You can read these blessings and see how many of these blessings you get. But I'm saying we don't get the blessings. I'm going to read the curses, and you're going to understand if the curses are happening to you, what you're getting, right? So the first curse, Leviticus 26, verse 14. But if you will not listen to me and will not do all these commandments, and if you shall despise my statutes, or if your soul hates my judgments, so that you will not do all my commandments, so that you will break my covenant, I will also do this to you. I will even appoint terror over you, consumption and burning fever, consuming the eyes and causing sorrow of heart. And you shall sow your seed in vain, and your enemies shall eat it. And I will set my face against you, and you shall be slain before your enemies, and they that hate you shall reign over you, and you shall flee when none pursues you. So again, I'm looking at this in 2005. That's when I first understood all of this. And I was trying to figure this out, trying to understand. But I understood there's 5 curses. They belong to each of the first sabbatical cycle. Second curse is second sabbatical cycle. Third curse is third. Fourth curse is fourth sabbatical cycle. And the 5th curse is the one directly in front of us now. So as I'm doing this, I recall that Osama bin Laden declared war on the United States in 1996, which really didn't mean much then. But in 1998, he blew up the embassies in Tanzania and Kenya. Now he becomes the most wanted. But then in 2000, he sends a little wooden boat against a USS warship, and he attacks it, and he blows this giant hole in the side of the ship. Who would do such a thing? But he did. But that wasn't enough. On September 11th, 2001, he attacks the Twin Towers in the United States. And everybody remembers this day that was alive at that time. Everyone remembers it because it changed the world. Our world was so devastated. I remember what I did that day. I remember the conversations I had. I remember where I was working. I remember everything about that day. I remember thinking that somebody, because I used to fly an airplane, somebody was so stupid that they could fly a Cessna into a Twin Tower, which is what I thought it was. But then I heard the second airplane hit, and we shut down work early that day, and we had to go home because we knew we were about to go to war. We didn't know with who. And then we heard about the third and the fourth airplanes, and we definitely had something going on. We just didn't know what it was yet. But the world changed on September 11, 2001. The debris field was massive. 6 months after this happened, I walked around the debris field. Could not believe it. It was just unbelievable. These are good people. These are good American citizens. The lady on the right, she went to church, she goes to church every Sunday. She's a Bible school teacher. She's trying to understand, why does the world hate us? Why does the world hate us Americans? We give, all our food. We supply all the, the food to the world, to the needy. We help. These people just went shopping. He got hit in the head by some debris falling from one of the buildings. Why do they hate us? Nobody asks the right question. They all wonder why they're hated, but the right question is here in Isaiah 9, verse 10. The bricks have fallen down, but we will build with cut stones. The sycamores are cut down, but we will use cedars instead. Read the rest of this. Read Daniel 9 or Isaiah 9. What is it? The 17, 18. You can read that. In each of these cases that Isaiah is talking about, the people want to rebuild after a disaster hits, but nobody repents. And that's what he's saying. And when all the politicians got up and said, they used that verse to quote, we're going to rebuild, we're going to build the Twin Towers higher, bigger, better. But nobody repented. And nobody's repented to this day for the sins of the Americans. Again, if God lets the Americans get off, or the Anglo-Saxon people get off with the slaughter of so many innocents as they do now, he's got to come back and apologize to Sodom and Gomorrah. So the U.S. began their longest war in history, starting September 11, 2001, going to August 30, 2021. That's a 20-year war. It's the longest one ever. On August 30, 2021, President Biden abandoned ship and left all his allies high and dry, just pulled out unilaterally and left the state of Afghanistan in chaos. September 11, 2001 was Shemini Atzeret. It was the 8th day feast. August 30, 2021 was Shemini Atzeret. It was an 8th day feast. Everything Jehovah does, he does on high holy days. What does that mean for this time? I don't know. I'm just recording it. I know that something took place on these 2 days, and I'm recording it. When I do know it in the future, I will let you know, but I don't know right now. Passover is an example where Yeshua did everything according to Passover as it was laid out. This first curse is now compounded onto the second sabbatical cycle. The first and second curse will then be compounded onto the third sabbatical cycle. The first, second, and third curses will be compounded onto the fourth sabbatical cycle. Then all 4 curses will be added to the 5th curse in the 5th sabbatical cycle, and they get worse and worse and worse the longer people will not repent. So the terrorism grew into London. Subways are being bombed, buses are being bombed. In Israel, Hezbollah begins to fire rockets in Israel. You know, anywhere else in the world, they'd be at war right away. But Israel tolerates it, selectively attacking certain positions instead of just destroying the enemy altogether. That's why they keep coming back. Now, this guy, Hezbollah head Hassan Nasrallah, asked, when in any Arab-Israeli conflict were 2 million Israelis forced to flee and enter bomb shelters? Right? When? The answer is in the very first curse that we read. And I will set my face against you, and you shall be slain before your enemies, and they that hate you shall reign over you. And the rest of that verse says, and you shall flee when no one pursues you. So we go back again to 9/11. Here's all these people running, but there's nobody chasing them. None at all. When we look at Israel today, Israel has 10 seconds to get into a bomb shelter. Sitter wrote, it takes 10 seconds from launch to landing. Go ahead, count. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9. Boom. That's all you got. If your child is outside playing, you got to go get them. The Patriot missiles, they need about 15 to 20 seconds to lock on to the missile before they can shoot it down. But the ones in Sitter, they go up and down too quick. Would you live like that? Could you live like that? This is terrorism. It's still ongoing. Also, back at during this Jubilee cycle, we have ISIS developing and growing until finally they form their caliphate and take over Syria and Iraq. And they're trying to take over even more territory, raping women, trading the Yazidi women, using them one night, sending them off to someone. They didn't care. That's their religion. That's what they believe. That's what they're showing people. They just don't care. Finally, you know, they got big enough. They're chopping off people's heads. They're getting more and more emboldened. We're seeing it on YouTube, seeing it on the nightly news. Then in 2017, they're defeated. I was on Peter Cairo's 700 Club here in the Philippines, and I warned him that he was, the Philippines was going to war with ISIS. That was in 2015. 2017, you went to war in Marari against ISIS. How did I know? Because this entity will not stop until you totally annihilate them. But they're going to keep on growing because you won't kill them all. So that's the thing here with ISIS. They're going to keep growing. They're going to keep coming back. And now they've done something else. They migrated. In 2011, we had the Syrian war. And in the Syrian war, we had about 5 different parties. We had the Turks, we had the Russians, we had the Syrians, we had the Americans, we had the Israelis. We had other people fighting this war. and we didn't know who the enemy was, but we kept fighting anybody and everybody. All these people got up and they migrated. Instead of going to Saudi Arabia, another Islamic country, or Iran, or Jordan, or Chechnya, or Sudan, they all walked to Germany. They just walked. And then all these people from North Africa decided to cross the Mediterranean, and they began to do that too. And all these millions of people flooded into Europe. Why is that important? Because it sets up the next prophecy. Again, we're still talking about terror here. The next prophecy is the toes of iron and clay. They do not mix. And everywhere where Islam is a no-go zone. They do not mix with the society that they're in. It's a no-go zone. Even the police don't go down there. If you're a woman, you have your arms or your cleavage exposed, you're going to get beaten. If you're wearing a short skirt above the knees, you're going to get beaten. If you're a man wearing or with a beer in your hands, walking down the street, you will be beaten. That's the first curse. Now for the second. And if you will not yet listen to me for all this, then I will punish you 7 times more for your sins. And I will break the pride of your power, and I will make your heaven like iron and your earth like bronze. And your strength shall be spent in vain, for your land shall not yield its increase, neither shall the trees of the field yield their fruits. So this is when the second curse is to take place. I'm doing this in 2005, trying to understand what all this means. But by the time I got to 2009, of these 7 years, 5 of them are the hottest years on record. The 5 hottest years on record had taken place at this time. Australia was crying about the worst drought in 1,000 years that they were dealing with. They had no water for their cattle, no water for their sheep, and they were slaughtering their animals because they were just running out of water. So instead of me showing you a bunch of slides from that time, I'm going to update the charts here, and we're going to go to 2022 when I first presented this in Mindanao. Now, this, I don't know if you can see my mouse, that's Hudson Bay. I live down here in this blue area. But Hudson Bay, north of it is what we call the North Pole. And as you can see, the North Pole was in drought. And over here is Greenland. It too was in drought. And Iceland is in drought. And North America is in drought. And right now, Canada has got wildfires in the west and in eastern Canada. We also have South America in drought. We got the Middle East in severe and drought. And North Africa and Europe also in severe drought. We got South Africa, Zimbabwe in severe drought. Australia was also in drought. And even this part of China. So by the time this part in China was, this map was taken, the droughts there had already subsided. They were in severe drought in China and in India in June and July of last year. So this is Lake Mead in 2000, Lake Mead in 2021, Lake Mead in the year 2022. It's only at 28% capacity. Now, I was there in December, and some of these pictures I took, not these pictures, some of the following pictures I took myself. Again, Lake Mead in 2017 and 2022, it's drying up. This is a picture I took on the right. It had dropped 70 feet in just that year before. It only had 70 feet to go before it hits the bottom, and no electricity is going to be able to go through this water or through this dam. And 40 million Americans depend on this dam for hydro in California. 1983 is the last time the water was this high. That's what it's supposed to look like. But it hasn't looked like that for over 40 years. Now, 40 years is a time of testing. And if you're being tested like this and you don't understand, it's the same as banging your head against a wall. You keep repeating and doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. The water keeps going down, but the United States will not repent. So this is Lake Powell, again in 2017 on the left, and in 2022. It's down to 26% capacity. The Colorado River, Lake Mead, is drying up. The Mississippi River has got 6 feet before they bottom out. The barges are half loads. Every picture you're about to see is all from August. Again, The last picture and every picture that you're about to see is from August last year. August 2022. All the rivers are drying up. All the economies of the world depend upon these rivers for their shipping of their products out and bringing products in. Otherwise, they got to go by train, which costs a whole lot more money. Even now, the shipping is half load season because there's so little water. The Rio Grande River is drying up as well between US and Mexico. This is a drought map from November, the end of November, 1st of December last year. 3/4 of the United States is in drought, in severe drought. Now, I point this out because the United States is an evangelical Protestant nation, but even the evangelicals and the God of them could not make it rain. So I'm now going to look at Europe, and this is the Loire River in 2021. This is the Loire River in 2022, and this is what it looks like at ground level. There's no water there. France just declared a national emergency because their crops failed in the southern France. Spain also declared a national emergency because their crops also failed this year. That was about 1 month ago from today. These are the famine stones written in Germany. This is on the Elbe River in Germany. It says, when you see these stones, weep. It means a famine is coming because there's been no rain. The water is so low that there's just not enough water for the crops. This is the Danube River, the longest river in Europe. It flows through 10 countries. This is the Rhine River in Germany. Again, it too is drying up. And all these rivers are Catholic, or they are dominated by the Catholic religion. And none of the Catholics can pray to God to make it rain. So their God can't help them. The Yangtze River is the longest river in China, third longest river in the world. It too is drying up. 450 million people depend on this river for water and for work. And last year, a lot of people sat at home because they just could not go to work. It got so hot there that when you walked across the pavement, your flip-flops fell off, and then you're walking on the pavement in your bare feet, and it just burnt your feet. So here's the drought map that I was trying to get before, and it shows China in severe drought crisis. This is Lake Puyang. It's now down to 25% capacity. It's China's largest freshwater lake. It's empty. This is again Lake Puyang, and that ship is sitting in the mud. Here's the Yellow River, or the Hanghe River in China. Again, it too is drying up. The Mekong River in China, which flows through Laos and Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam, it too is drying up. And the common thing about all these places is that they're dominated by Buddhism and Confucianism. Their God could not make it rain, and their God could not stop the drought. This is the one that always concerns me. It's the Ganges and Indus rivers. They are flooding right now. They are not drying up. They are flooding. But they're flooding because of the ice in the mountains, which is not being replaced. So up here north of Delhi in Kathmandu is the Himalaya mountain. And from those mountains, the glaciers are melting because it's so hot. India here is at black and red, which is severe drought last year. But the rivers are flooding because the Himalayas are melting. Once the Himalayas run out of snow and ice, those rivers will be dried up. And that ice and snow is not being replaced even this year. So we're in for a whole lot of pain here coming very, very soon to a whole lot of nations. India has 33 million gods. None of those gods could make it rain. None of those gods could help stop the drought. We got the Euphrates River in Iraq. We got the Tigris River in Iraq, and both of them are drying up. And prophecy even tells us when you see the river in Euphrates dry up, to be ready. The armies from the east are going to be coming soon. This is Lake Urmia in Iran. It too is drying up. This is not snow or ice. That's the bottom of the lake. And the Bible also tells us that the Nile River is going to dry up. And sure enough, the Nile River is drying up as we speak. Here's the Indus River in Pakistan. It too is drying up. And the Amu Darya River, which flows through Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and Afghanistan, and then dumps into the Aral Sea, it too is drying up. And all of these places are dominated by the religion of Islam. And their God could not stop the drought. Their God could not make it rain. And yet, in its wisdom, the United Nations has sought to collect all these different religions and bring them together to form a group under COP26 and COP27, and later this year, COP28, to help stop global warming or climate change. But none of their gods can do that. Nowhere in the world can any of these guys make it rain or stop the drought. There's another god we got to look at, and here's the Kenya last year. There's only 3 cattle I see alive in this whole picture. All the rest of them died within a few days of each other. But their God could not make it rain. That's the same God that they used in the Amazon River. The Amazon River and the Parana River are also drying up. And the God there is what the United Nations call the indigenous religions all over the world. The United Nations hates Catholicism or Christianity. They hate Judaism and they hate Islam. But they love to promote indigenous religions. But even where Mother Earth is the god of the area, Mother Earth could not make it rain, and Mother Earth could not stop the drought. But the United Nations thinks that they can get all these people to help stop climate change. Again, I'm showing you this to show you how stupid it all is, right? It's getting hotter and hotter. It will continue to get hotter in the years to come. It's going to get much worse. So again, Lake Mead's been going down for 40 years. This drought's been coming now for what, 6-7 years now. The sign of insanity is to keep doing the same thing, but nobody wants to repent. And this is Joplin, Missouri. A mile-wide tornado went through here. It just destroyed everything. Why do you wait until disaster comes? Now I'm talking to you in the Philippines. This is Typhoon Haiyan. Why are you going to wait until the next disaster comes to you? Why are you going to wait until this is you picking up your relatives, your husband, your father, your son out of the mud, your children? Why are you going to wait until a disaster hits you? Why are you going to wait till your granddaughter or your daughter is tossed around and she finally survives whatever happens and she doesn't know if she has any parents left? Why are you going to wait? I'm only on the second curse. Third curse. And if you will walk contrary to me and will not listen to me, I will bring 7 times more plagues on you according to your sins. I will also send wild beasts among you who shall bereave you, and I will destroy your cattle and make you few, and your highways shall be deserted. Now, when I was looking at this, I couldn't figure it out. But then in 2009, we had swine flu. And for the first time, the city was deserted and the airport was shut down and the highways were empty. And then I began to understand what this curse was about. So I started to look at it. Famines, pestilence, and earthquakes, they all seem to go together. And that sort of gave me a clue as to what to be looking for. I'm doing this again in 2005. We're talking about the 3rd sabbatical cycle, which is from 2010 to 2016. And the curses of the second curse and the first curse are going to both be added to this. So here's a slide I had from 2009. It looks just like people today in 2015. Is this what it was? Is this the curse it's talking about? Is the animals of God going to send on us? Are they microscopic? So we've now got bird flu, swine flu, H1N9. We got Ebola. We had SARS. We had MERS. So again, when we're doing this, my wife is a nurse. And in 2010, we had SARS. Nobody knew what SARS was, but nurses were dying. Right? Nurses were dying. I didn't want my wife to die. Then we had MERS, right? Again, what's going on? We did not know. I also noticed that there was a pattern. If we go back in history, we have the 1918 flu pandemic or Spanish flu. It took place at the same time. 40 million people died. So I started to look at all this time, the same Jubilee cycle or the same period in each Jubilee cycle going back in time for just the Israelite nations. And I see this pattern developing. El Tor from 1961 to 1975, the avian flu and influenza and cholera during this time period. It's during the third and fourth sabbatical cycles. Before that, we have cholera in the third, fourth, and fifth sabbatical cycles. Again, Jubilee cycle before that, the same thing. Influenza, the Jubilee cycle before that during the American Revolution. And the Jubilee cycle before that, again, that's 6 Jubilee cycles in a row. Before that, we had the bubonic plague, but I couldn't get enough details to make it work, to show how it was. But we have 1 year with the bubonic plague and another year someplace else. So we now got COVID-19, Omicron, Delta, BA5, BF7, and all the different names that the COVID has now taken on. And as of January 4, 2023, China still had 9,000 people a day dying. So this was interesting, but it says in Matthew that there were famines, pestilence, and earthquakes. So I decided to start looking for earthquakes, see what that would show me. Shortly after this, again, 2011, we had the Japanese earthquake and tsunami. Why do we let these things happen? Why don't we do something now? I got this chart from the United States earthquake record department, and this goes from 1900 on the left, 1996 on the right-hand side, and that's 1996 to 2008. So I got this chart in 2008 or 2009, right? Look how high it jumped up. Then in 2010, I updated the chart, and this is M6 or above. Again, it starts taking off in 1996. The most destructive quakes, this is again 2011, from 1996 is peaking. This is last year in Taiwan, when I was speaking here in Mindanao. But from 2000 to 2021, it seems to go flatline. We've got 1,358 earthquakes to 2,481. So it doesn't seem to be shooting up like it was, but it's still quite high. You've now got 3 volcanoes on the watch list here in the Philippines, and one's actually spewing lava. So you know what I'm talking about. This is the worldwide disasters for Africa, America, Asia, Europe, and Oceania. And 1998 is the date you can see there. So I'm looking at 1996 as a Jubilee cycle, and we're still going up even then. So I'm noticing a pattern. This final 120th Jubilee cycle, things are getting worse everywhere around the world. It's not just about the state of Israel. It's everywhere around the world. And even though COP26, COP27 blame these disasters on global warming or climate change, it is not global warming. It is not climate change. These are not because of what men is doing. These are because what men are not doing, and they are not obeying God. These curses are sent from Jehovah because we do not obey him. So in the curse in Revelation 9:16, it continues to get hotter until it scorches men. And they don't repent. They just curse God. It's going to continue to get hotter. When the water becomes stagnant, it turns to, the algae builds up and it turns to red. This is where we get red tide from, or an algae bloom field, which can kill people or kill fish. Every plague of Egypt is going to be released on mankind during the next 10 years, starting in 2024, every plague of Egypt. Each plague, all 10 plagues, 1 plague per year. They're combined with the 7 trumpets. Those 7 trumpets and the 10 plagues of Egypt will be happening at the same time. It is not climate change. It is Jehovah. During these next 7 years, you're going to see the 2 witnesses come on the world scene, and I will explain that in a few moments. These have authority to shut up the heaven, Revelation 11, verse 6, that it may not rain in the days of their prophecy. It's going to be 3.5 years of no rain anywhere on earth. And one of the things I want or need, or I'm not telling you, is the Philippines needs to get ready for a severe drought. Yes, it's rainy season right now, but if your drought comes, like it does in the rest of the world, how will you survive? You do not have glaciers to drink from. Your water comes from the ground or from the rain. You need to get ready. You got 3 years to get ready. Not 4, like I say here, it's 3 years. So those 2 witnesses are going to show up in the year 2026. We're now in the year 2023. Again, you got 21 years until the 7th millennium. But unless those days are cut short, no flesh will be saved alive. Those days being cut short is to 2033. That's when Satan will be locked away. Again, we'll explain this here shortly. Alvin, it's 9 o'clock. How are we doing? Keep going.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So around the world, Spain, Europe, Israel, Canada right now, United States, Australia, there are wildfires, extremely out of control wildfires. And this is the LA. And if you had to go through that, if you had to go through this, you wouldn't be able to do it. Well,
Michelle Chamberlain lives in the Beacon Hill neighborhood of Fort McMurray.
what I'm showing you here is this trailer went through there and the side of the trailer melted off. And if you had to do that here in the Philippines in a jeepney or a tricycle, how would you do it? A bunch of people were trying to flee a wildfire like that in Spain, and the first car crashed, and each car following it crashed into it until all 13 cars piled in. Anybody that got out of the car was killed. Anybody that stayed in their car was burnt alive in their car. It's going to be that bad everywhere around the world. God told, I forget where it says, I think it's Peter, he first destroyed the world by flood, and then in the last days, he destroys the world by fire. And we're seeing that happen right now. We just aren't associating it with the curses of God, which we need to do. The temperatures are going to continue to get hotter and hotter every year. The United Nations wants to keep it below 1.5. It's already at 2. The oceans right now are all heating up. Is that El Nino or La Nina? It doesn't matter. The temperatures are heating up, which means everything in the world is going to get hotter. You need to develop these fog banks to collect the humidity from the air and turn that into water that you can drink if you want to survive. If you don't want to survive, then you can just do nothing. Okay, so we also need water to run our electricity for our nuclear power plants and our dams. When the rivers dry up, they have to shut these sources down. Then you have no AC, you don't have no electricity. And if you got an electric car, you have no electricity for your car. So this is the 4th curse. We've now covered the first 3. And in 2020, you saw COVID arrive. So now let's read the 4th curse. If you will not be reformed by me, by these things, but will still walk contrary to me, then I will walk contrary to you and will punish you 7 times more for your sins. Again, every time he says 7 times, he's referring to a sabbatical cycle.
Bakit?
Basketball yun.
Oh, diretso siya?
Magdala yung bisang kami.
Verse 25, and I will bring a sword on you. That's actually the vengeance of the covenant. And when you're gathered inside your cities, I will send the plague. What's this 4th curse? It's a 4th sabbatical cycle. I, Jehovah, will send the plague. And you shall be delivered to the hand of the enemy. When I have broken the staff of your bread, 10 women shall bake your bread in one oven. And they shall deliver you your bread again by weight, and you shall eat and not be satisfied. So there's the 4th curse. And what happened on 2020? Exactly what it says. I will send the plague. So the word sword it also means a drought or a dry and desolate place. The word sword in that sense is meaning the pains of famine will be so sharp in your stomach, it'll be like a piercing sword. And that's what Jeremiah says in Lamentations, the same thing. So this fourth curse is sword or famine, plague, and drought, and or it could be war. We've got the war. Russia's going against Ukraine. The United States is supporting Ukraine, and Europe is supporting Ukraine. And we're at the border or the edge of a World War III with Russia. China is supporting Russia. Iran is supporting Russia. So the battle lines are being drawn up as we speak. We've got famine or drought, or this is the piercing sword. The smart technology that we need to direct our bombs where we want them to go all comes from China, who own all the rare earth material that we need. We're in a great deal of trouble. If we go to war against China over Taiwan tomorrow, they say that the United States has 2 weeks worth of supply. They've spent all their supplies in Ukraine, who is burning them up, fighting the Russians. So it's not climate change. It's not global warming. These are curses of Leviticus 26 that are happening. They are from Jehovah himself. We need to be aware of that. These curses come from Jehovah. This is not conspiracy teachings. This is not some newfangled idea on YouTube about some other crazy idea. These come from Jehovah. He's sending these curses against us because we are not listening to him. United Nations head David Beasley told us in 2016, there was 80 million people starving around the world. He figured he could solve that in a year or two. In 2018, because of climate change, we had 135 million. In 2020, we had 276 million, and he blamed that on COVID-19 and supply chain disruptions. And if you remember, it was hard to get groceries during that time. In 2022, we have now got 345 million, and he's blaming this on the Russia-Ukraine war, the lack of fertilizer that Russia doesn't ship out anymore. And right now, I believe China and the Philippines are no longer exporting their rice. I could be wrong, but I thought I read that not too long ago. A number of other countries have stopped exporting their wheat. We're going into famine mode around the world. Are you ready? David Beasley says that we are in the perfect storm of perfect storms for a major, major catastrophe. Are you ready? The UN sees it coming. Are you ready? So we got war, that's a sword. We got famine. We got plague. We got another word for sword is drought or famine. We've got all these things happening in this fourth sabbatical cycle now. These things are happening right now. And you know we're in the last days. And this is the part I always ask the audience, do you really want to know what the fifth curse is? Because this fifth curse is the one that's about to begin. And they always say, yes, read it. Leviticus 26, verse 27. And if you will not for all this, listen to me, but will walk contrary to me, then I will walk contrary to you also in fury. Listen to what he said. He's going to do this in fury. That's going to come into play in a little bit. And even I will chastise you 7 times for your sins. And you shall eat the flesh of your sons, and you shall eat your daughters. Right? That's this fifth curse. And you're going to be doing that in this fifth sabbatical cycle. Right? First curse is the first sabbatical cycle. Second curse is the yellow cycle. Third curse is the green and red cycle. And I got the red there for the blood moons of 2014, 2015, and 2016, warning you of the next sabbatical cycle. And then in 2020, we had COVID. And now we got famine starting in 2016 to 2022 is the latest stats. We also have drought around the world starting in 2018. And here we are in 2023. 2024 begins the fifth curse, the curse of famine. The fifth curse of famine The rivers are already drying up, and we got the two witnesses supposed to show up in 2026 when they'll not rain for 3.5 years at that time. Again, I'm just full of good news to make everybody happy, right? We're still good. We're going to keep on going. You want to learn about the abomination and how I know when the two witnesses will show up. Okay. Yep. Okay. What are we doing? Yeah, just so you all know, this is an 18-hour teaching I do. 18, right? Okay, so the abomination and vindication. When does all of this begin? Again, the key to understanding all end-time prophecy is understand the Sabbath and Jubilee cycles. But you also must understand the holy days. If you want to know prophecy, you must understand the meaning of the holy days. Then apply that understanding to the Jubilee cycles. So Matthew 24, verse 15. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, whoever reads, let him understand. You can go ahead and read the rest of this in Matthew 24. You have a false Christ already, and nobody's doing anything about it. You shouldn't have any false Christ, but you guys have 6 million people following one here in the Philippines. So Matthew 24:15. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel, what was Daniel speaking about? That's what we have to do. So now we're going to learn to understand this. We're going to go and read Daniel. And he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and offering to cease. And on the corner of the altar, desolating abominations. Now, because of the desolating abomination on the corner of the altar, everyone is assuming that we must have a temple. But let's go back and read this verse a little bit slower and understand. And he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. This covenant is what everyone is signed on to. This covenant was created in, let me go back to my other chart. In 1972, right here. In 1972, the United Nations Environmental Program was created. And in that environmental program, they wanted to save the frogs, the polar bears, the koala bear, the blue whale. They wanted to save all the animals around the world from being destroyed. It's a good covenant. But the very first thing they do in this covenant is they make the very first clause about human rights. What does a blue whale need with human rights? Again, the covenant for 1 week. What's a week? We already covered that. It's the same word. Covenant for 1 week is 1 Shabuah. It's a 49. It's a covenant for 49 years. From 1972 to 2020 is 49 years. That's why I'm showing you this so you can count it. Now we'll go back to my slides. The covenant made with many. So the human rights is the very first clause. Well, it goes on to become known as the UNEP changes name to the Kyoto Accord, Agenda 21, the Rio Accord, the Rio Plus 20. And the latest version today is the Paris Accord. And President Trump signed off of this accord in 2016 when he took office. But because of a clause in the Paris Accord, you cannot get out of it until 4 years later. President Obama shoved this in on President Trump. He got all the world to sign on to it, including the Philippines. Every nation around the world has agreed to this covenant made with many, called the UNEP, or today the Paris Accord. When Trump got out of it at the end of 2020, President Biden then signed back onto it again. So what's wrong with this accord? The human rights part. In 2011, South Africa made an amendment to the accord, and they said that it's no longer okay for people to hate other people because of race, because of ethnicity, or because of gender. There was an amendment made to that amendment, and then it was any sexual orientation, which means that anyone that claims to be LGBTQ has a human rights issue with anyone who is against LGBTQ. So you cannot stop LGBTQ. That's why the Western leaders, starting in 2011, went around the world promoting LGBTQ, LMNOP, QRSTUV, WXYZ rights to everyone else around the world. And the Philippines has signed on to this. You have made a covenant with the United Nations and you agreed to this. And now you're trying to fight SOGI, which is crazy because you've already agreed to SOGI at the United Nations. So that's a covenant made with many. God, Jehovah, honors covenants, and he respects people who honor covenants, even if it's to their detriment. So how are you going to repent from this? Well, we began a bill in 2015 when I was here, House Bill 6312, to include the 7 feasts of Jehovah as a holy day. You've already got holy days for every other religion in the world except Jehovah, except Leviticus 23. None of those holy days are made national holidays anywhere in the world except in Israel. And if you did that here in the Philippines, that would be the first step in the right direction to apologizing and making amends for signing the declaration made with many. Because you're going to suffer the curses for doing that. So Daniel 9:27, next part. And in the midst of the week, what's the week? The week is the word Shabuah. In the midst of the Shabuah, the midst of the Feast of Weeks, in the midst of the 49, he shall cause sacrifice and offering to cease. What does that mean? 1996 is the start of the Jubilee cycle. 2044 is the end of this last 120th Jubilee cycle, and 2045 is the start of the 7th millennium. What is the middle of this Jubilee cycle? I've got it highlighted in red. 2020 is the middle. And in the midst of the 70th week, the 70th Jubilee, he shall cause sacrifice and offering to cease. We know what the middle is. We know 1996 was a Jubilee year. We know when the Jubilee years are. We know when the sabbatical years are. We know where we are in time. But what is the sacrifice and offering? What ceased? What stopped in 2020? The middle of the Jubilee cycle again is 2020. What stopped? We are now looking over our shoulder. What happened in 2020? COVID happened. March 11, 2020, Passover, the day we were keeping Passover, who declared a worldwide pandemic? It happened on the very holy day. It's a wake-up call. It's God telling you, look, look, look. I didn't know what it meant. Not until 2021. But I knew something big had happened because it happened on Passover. I just didn't know exactly what it meant. So March 11, 2020, who declares a worldwide pandemic, and all the churches around the world begin to shut down. Okay. Where's the altar? Where's the temple? What are we talking about here? Where's the temple? Where's the altar? It's got to happen on the corner of the altar. Where's the temple? What's going on? I'll answer one part first. Hosea 14, verse 2. O Israel, return to Shuvah to your God. Return to your God, for you have fallen by your iniquity. That word iniquity is referring to the days of atonement. This whole thing is applying to those 10 days of awe. Take with you the words, the Torah, and to Shuvah. That's what you do during the 10 days of awe. This happens to be the reading that you do on Shabbat Shuvah during the 10 days of awe, which is the only Shabbat during the 10 days of awe. Say to him, take away our all iniquity, right? We want you to atone for our sins and receive us graciously, that we may repay with the calves of our lips. The bullocks of our lips is what we're to repay him with. The bullocks of our lips. What is it? That's the praise and offering that we do. The praise and offering that we do. Every church, every synagogue, every temple, every mosque, every place of worship around the world shut down on March 11, 2020. Everywhere. Yeah, there are a couple of rebellious groups that didn't shut down. Okay, but the majority, 99.9% of the world shut down March 11, 2020. If they didn't shut down March 11, that was the announcement, but by March 21st, they were shutting down because nobody understood what was happening with COVID. There was no vaccine then. People were dropping dead. But 7 million recorded, and they believe it could be as many as 15 million around the world. 277 million people got infected, and many people still wear a mask today, even to our meetings. It was a real event. If it's not COVID, what is it? What is the praise and offering that ceased? What is the sacrifice and offering that ceased? You got 2 years behind you to look back. What is it? You have to decide something. We know it was COVID. We know that it was a sacrifice or the bullets of our lips that stopped. Corporate prayer stopped. If that's right, you may not agree with me. Fine. You have to put something else in there. Most people can't. So if it's something else, let me know. Let me see what it is. Prove your point. But if it's sacrifice and offering, if that's the prayers of our lips that have ceased, then we now turn to Daniel 12. Okay? And we're going to read this one. At the time, and at that time, Michael shall stand up, the great ruler who stands for the sons of your people. And there shall be a time of trouble. That's the end of the days. That's the time we're in now, such as never was since there was a nation, until that time. And at that time, your people shall be delivered. Everyone that shall be found written in the book, right? Written in the book of life. And when you say that, may your name be found in the book of life, you all should say back to me, and may your name also be found. You're all muted, but that's okay. May your name be found in the book of life. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. People are wondering about the rapture. Here's the rapture. This is getting close to that time when this is going to happen, right? Verse 3. And those who are wise shall shine as the brightness of the sky. This is where you come in. You're supposed to be the wise. And those who turn many to the righteousness shall shine as the stars forever and ever. But you, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. That's knowledge of Torah shall be increased. And we are at the times of the end. So this should be revealed to us now. Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, there stood another two. The one on this side, he says another two because we're in chapter 12. The other two he's talking about were in chapter 8. Then one on this side and one on the other side of the bank of the river. And the one on said to the man clothed in linen on the waters of the river, until when shall be the end of these wonders? So right there, you're told this guy doesn't know when this stuff ends. And in the next verse, you're going to be told when it does, because the other guy does know. And I heard the man clothed in linen who was on the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left hand to heaven, and swore by him who lives forever, that it shall be for a time, times and a half. And when they have made an end of scattering the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. And I heard, but I did not understand. Then I said, O my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And he said, Go, Daniel, for the words are closed, up and sealed until the end time. Many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. And from verse 11, and from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away. Again, the daily sacrifice, the bullets of your lips, March 11, 2020. From the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away and the desolating abomination set up, 1,290 days shall occur. Blessed he who waits and comes to the 1,335 days. We're not going to talk about that today, but that's the rapture part. But you go on to the end, for you shall rest and stand in your lot at the end of the days. So verse 11 is the one we want to key in on, and that's connected to Daniel 9:27. In the midst of the week, he shall cause sacrifice and offering to cease. And you know the middle of the week to be 2020, the middle of the Shabuah, the middle of the 49. What you have to determine is what ceased. And looking back, the only thing that ceased is the bullets of our lips. Again, if you disagree, provide something else that's tangible. So March 11, 2020 is when WHO shut down the churches, houses of prayer, mosques, synagogues, and temples everywhere around the world. So now all we got to do is start counting from March 11, 2020. That leaves 20 days for the month of March, and then each of the months is 30 or 31. And I just start adding them all up. There's 2021, there's 2022, here's 2023. And by the time we get to September 22nd, 2023, that's when we expect to see the abomination. Or it could be 7 days later. Again, the announcement was March 11th, 7 days later, last day of unleavened bread, that's when things began to lock down. I don't know which one it is. I'm looking, I'm watching. You now know where to watch, you now know where to look, you now know what to be looking for and when to be looking for it. You're now getting ready, you're now becoming proper watchmen, looking for the proper thing at the proper time. So, September 22nd, using the Hillel calendar or the rabbinic calendar, is the 6th day of the 10 days of awe. The Feast of Trumpets is here. This is the 7th month, according to them, is September 17th. September 22nd is a Friday. Then we have their Shabbat Shuvah. And then the 10th day of Day of Atonement is Yom Kippur, September 26th. What is this abomination? What could it be? There's two choices. When you look at the Maccabees and what's his name? Antiochus. When you look at that time, there's two things he did. He set up a statue of Zeus, and he sacrificed pig's blood. So what am I looking for? One of two of those things, or maybe both of those things. It can be one or the other. The way I'm reading Revelation, I see this abomination happening maybe 2 times. I'm not sure. Right now in Israel, they have the red heifer. And if the red heifers are sacrificed, they want them to be sacrificed and able to be used for the atoning of the priest, which happens on the Day of Atonement. They have not set a date when they're going to sacrifice the red heifers. But if they did it on the Friday, they would burn them that day. It would take all day to burn them. Then on the Saturday, they would be finished burning, cooling down. Sunday, they could collect the ashes, mix them with water, and begin to atone the people on either the Monday or the Tuesday of Yom Kippur, thereby atoning everyone, getting them all ready to now begin to build the temple. They could now do that. They already have an altar ready that they can put on the Mount of Olives, and they can set that altar up in a matter of hours. So, pray that your flight is not in the winter or on the Sabbath day. I'm going to skip this part because we don't need to really, it's not that important to what we're talking about. But 2023, the word Sabbath day is also Sabbaton or Sabbath year, which is also 2023. It's a sabbatical year. On the corner of the altar, so this is the part we need to address because most people don't have a clue what the altar is. They think the temple has to be built. But here's Joshua's altar. And if you look carefully, you can see Randy and myself, we're 2 dots right here. And he's flying the drone when he takes us. This is Joshua's altar where I take people on my tours. This is the bronze altar that goes over top of this hole. Right here in the middle, it looks like an H, the little spot in the middle. That's where Abram and Jacob both had an altar. They found them. And the H is where all the ashes were. This goes over top of that to keep the meat from falling down until it's completely burned. So the question I ask people now is to start thinking, where was Yeshua killed? Yeshua was the lamb, and the lamb was killed on the sin offering altar. The altar of the sin offering. Where is the altar of the sin offering? It's also the same place the red heifer will be offered. The red heifer altar and the sin offering were done outside the city. They were done east of the temple. And east of the temple is a certain mountain. The name of that mountain is called Golgotha. Yeshua was killed on Mount Golgotha. He was the lamb, the sin offering. He would have been killed very near the red heifer offering or the sin offering place, which he was. This is the same mount during the daytime. On the left-hand side, where the arrow is pointing, that's where Yeshua was killed. That's where the red heifer altar should be. This mount is all covered in trees. It's been protected by Jehovah all these years. On the right-hand side is the southern end of Golgotha, which is the southern end of the three mountains of Olives. Golgotha is the southern end. It's also called the Mount of Offense. Then we have the Mount of Olives in the middle and the Mount Scopus up at the top end. But at the very southern end of the Mount of Olives is Mount Golgotha, where Solomon offered his idols to Molech and to Ishtar. And that's why the mount was called the Mount of Offense. The valley on the right-hand side is called the Azul Valley, and it flows around to the back, and then it flows all the way up to just above the D here. And that's where the Azazel goats were thrown off on the Day of Atonement. And when they were thrown off the cliff, as the goat fell, the thread on its horn would turn from red to white if their sins were atoned for. It was a big day, a big day. For 40 years after Yeshua was killed, it never turned white, not once. This Azazel Valley meets down here at the Kidron Valley. Now, after Solomon built these altars here, King Jehoiakim, Joash, I forget which king, around 863 or just before that, turned them into latrines. Because that's what an altar is. It's just a big pile of poop. And then there was an earthquake, I think in 863 or thereabouts, and this whole place moved 1.5 kilometers to the south. And these altars would then roll down into the Azazel Valley, just the same way the goat was thrown into the Azazel Valley. So this corner of the altar that is spoken of here is going to be somewhere in this area next to the Azazel Valley, either on this southwest corner or on the southeast corner. But I believe it'll be on the southwest, so that it will be overlooking the Alaska Mosque and the Dome of the Rock. And it'll be some sort of statue of Jesus or maybe a statue of Mary. In this convent here, this is the Abraham de Maison convent where I stay. There are no statues, there are no crucifixes anywhere on this property. So this could be the abomination that takes place at that time. I will be there looking. Again, this is another view from the walls of Jerusalem. This is where the abomination set up where the arrow is. At the other end is the other corner, the far corner is where Yeshua was killed. That's also where Ron Wyatt found the Ark of the Covenant. So everything's lining up there. It's across from the city of David, which is right here where this tree is. That's where the Gihon Spring is as well. The Daniel 9 also reads on the wings of the abomination, which is referring to the tzitzits, and that's just referring us to the corners of the altar again, right? So now all of this is in our book, The Restoration of All Things and the Abomination That Makes Desolate. Both of them are out now. The 10 Days of Awe is the one I'm working on. It's going to explain the 10 plagues of Egypt, the 10 Days of Awe, the 7 trumpets, the 7 last vials, and the 7 seals. I'm hoping to get that done soon. But before we wrap this up, we got a couple more things to look at. I want to talk about the days of Noah, because it says in Luke 17:26, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the last days of the Son of Man. What does that mean? It means absolutely nothing, and we start speculating about Nephilim and giants and all kinds of stupid stuff. That's not what it's talking about. Read what it says, right? It says, and so also as it was in the days of Lot. They ate, you guys ate today. They drank, you guys drank today. They bought, you guys bought stuff today. They sold, you may have sold stuff today. You may have planted. Well, you shouldn't be planting this year because it's shemitah year. And you also may be building a house. So if the people in Noah's day and Lot's day were bad for doing these things, so are you. Right? So it's not talking about these things. Let's go back and look at the days of the days of Noah. Noah died, or the flood of Noah came in 1656 after the creation of Adam. That is the fourth year in the sixth sabbatical cycle. As it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the last days. Well, the fourth year of the sixth sabbatical cycle would be 2034. Noah's flood came at the second month, or the second Passover, on the 17th day of the second month. So he's talking about Passover. Now I've got these days highlighted here, 2038, 2033, and 2024, all in blue for a reason, which I'll explain in a moment. Again, we also have Lot, as it was in the days of Lot. What does that mean? Because you're doing the exact same thing. Are you guys corrupt because you eat and drink and buy and sell stuff? No. It has to do with the pattern, which is what Alvin's been saying. It has to do with the pattern. Isaac was born in 2048. The year before, the angels came to visit Abraham. That was 2047, after the creation of Adam. So we count the years. That was also Passover that year. 1, 2, the third year of the sixth sabbatical cycle. We count again our day today. 1, 2, 3. That's counting the third year. But the 2033 I have here is not counting the third year or Passover, it's counting the Day of Atonement. The Day of Atonement is between Passover of 2033 and Passover of 2034. It's in the middle of the days of Noah and in the middle of the days of Lot, right? It's the Day of Atonement. So what I've done is I've counted the Jubilee year as similar to the eighth day. The Jubilee year has a similar teaching to the eighth day, so I made the Jubilee year 2045 the eighth day. And I just started counting back 7 days for the Feast of Sukkot. So the first day of the Feast of Sukkot is 2038. And I'm doing a day for a year here, and I'm trying to see how the fall holy days line up with the end of this age, the same way as Passover lined up with Yeshua coming and dying on the tree for us. How do the fall holy days fit in? That's what I'm trying to figure out. So 2038 represents the Sukkot, or the first holy day. 5 days before that represents the Day of Atonement, which is 2033, which is when Satan will be locked away. Then 2024 represents the start of the Feast of Trumpets, or the 10 days of judgment, or 10 days of awe. Shabbat Shuvah is represented by the year of 2030. That's the Shabbat of return. The Hosea 14, return, O Israel, bring the Torah scrolls. So looking back at the days of Noah, what is the days of Noah? It's judgment. Judgment on the world, of which Noah was the only righteous man, but the rest of his family got on board and they were saved. What is the days of Lot? The days of Lot, again, is judgment. Judgment on Sodom and Gomorrah. It also just so happens to be the judgment on Nimrod when he was executed. That's another story, though. So judgment in 2047. The sixth sabbatical cycle is the final judgment that's coming. Then I've learned by doing the chronology, we look at the days of Joseph. Joseph had 7 years of plenty here in pink or purple, and he had 7 years of famine in red. And the final year of the famine was the third year of the sixth sabbatical cycle. Now, Luke doesn't mention this, so I can't use it as one of my proofs, but it lines up, and it just adds more weight to the year 2033. Again, 2033 is between Passover 2034 and Passover 2033, as we're talking about the Day of Atonement, which is judgment for Satan. Satan will be judged on the Day of Atonement. That's why you got to understand the holy days. That's what the Day of Atonement represents. It's judgment on Satan at that time. And at that time, he will be thrown in the lake, in the pit, or thrown off the cliff of into the Azazel Valley for the seventh millennium. At the end of the seventh millennium, he will then be thrown in the lake of fire. Could the Azazel Valley be a lava pit then? It could be. I don't know. Okay. So the fall holy days fit in with these last days. 2033. Again, unless those days were cut short, no flesh will be saved alive. So Satan's locked away in 2033 is cutting those days short. If you don't agree with me, awesome. Between 2023 and 2044, all end time prophecy must take place. So if you have a different theology, plug it in here. But it's got to be cut short. Those days got to be cut short. And 2045 begins the seventh millennium. This is not going to happen during the seventh millennium. Jehovah will not allow it to happen. So the 10 days of awe are from 2024 to 2033. They are not 10 days, they are now 10 years. The seven plagues, the seven trumpet plagues also happened during this time. We don't have time right now to get into that. We are going to jump ahead. Judgment is coming starting in 2024. Judgment is coming starting in 2024. During 2024 to 2033, the seven trumpets and the seven bowls will take place. I believe the final part of the seven seals will be wrapped up. We have one more verse we need to look at, though. One more thing that we got to check out. Remember, I said the two witnesses are coming in 2026. So Daniel 8, verse 11. Daniel 8, verse 11. And he magnifies himself even to the ruler of the host, and the daily. What's the daily? Again, the morning and evening sacrifice, 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. Yeshua was put on the tree at 9 a.m. He died at 3 p.m. That's when the morning and evening sacrifice. This is the sacrifice and offering. That's when it's made. And the daily was taken away by him, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Who was cast down? Satan was cast down. And an army was given to him against the daily. Right? Because of transgression, and it casts the truth to the ground. Now, I stop here because I want people to understand that all your conspiracy teachings are casting the truth to the ground. The government's out to kill us. 9/11 didn't happen. It was an inside job. That was Jehovah taking away or sending terror. No, it's not Jehovah. It's 9/11's inside job. Global warming is happening. No, it's not global warming. Jehovah's sending his curses. No, it's a HARP, or it's chemtrails, or it's something else. COVID wasn't real. That's a CIA plot to kill mankind, started by Bill Gates and George Soros in Wuhan, China. All these things discredit what Jehovah is doing. Now we no longer believe in newscasts because the news are, they work for the state and the state's out to kill us all. Stop. Stop being a part of it. Stop spreading gossip. Stop spreading slander and truth. You cannot prove this stuff. None of you have proven any of this true. All you've done is taken TikTok and YouTube and believed what they said. TikTok and YouTube is not your authority of truth. Torah is. But you don't believe Torah anymore because you're so wrapped up in YouTubes and TikTok and finding the latest intrigue to the deepest rabbit hole you can find. Stop. Start reading your Bible. Just read your Bible. Stop studying conspiracies because they're going to work and they're going to succeed. And every conspiracy person that I see that was in Torah is now led away from Torah and no longer practices Torah and is now involved deeply in conspiracies. And they just throw an odd God and a hallelujah in there to make it sound righteous. It's not. This thing that Satan is doing is working. Do not be a part of it. Verse 13. Then I heard a certain holy one speaking, and another holy one said to the one who spoke, until when shall the vision last? Again, we have the two witnesses here. One knows and one does not know concerning the daily sacrifice, the daily offering, and the transgressions that astounds, to give both the sanctuary, and that word sanctuary can be saints, and the host to be trampled. So it's the saints, the host of saints, the army of saints, all the saints, the DNA descendants of the 12 tribes of Israel, as well as the martyrdom of those of you who keep Torah, are going to be trampled. You're trampled when you're killed. So this is a persecution that's coming. very, very soon. Verse 14, and he said to me, for 2,300 evenings and mornings, then the sanctuary, the saints, shall be vindicated. And the vision of the evenings and mornings, which was told, is true. But you shut up the vision, for it shall be for many days. The word vindicated here is what I want you to focus on, and then take you to Revelation 6:10. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, until when, Master, holy and true, do you not judge and avenge our blood on those who dwell on the earth? The word avenge is the word indiceo, which means to vindicate. Who are these that are going to vindicate the deaths of the saints? It's the two witnesses. 300 evenings and mornings from the March 11th brings you to 2023. So I just do the same thing, start counting from March 11th, start, add up all the years and just keep adding them up. And we come to 2024, which is a leap year. Got to remember that. February 29th, a leap year. And 2026 is June 28th. Now, again, in my head, it should be in the fall time, not June. It should be in the fall that this starts. But that's what the numbers tell me. So I'm not going to fudge the numbers. I'm just going to report them the way they are. So starting June 26th, 2020, June 28th, 2026, that's when the two witnesses begin to vindicate the world, vindicate the saints who have been martyred and killed. That's when the rain will stop around the world for 3.5 years. 3.5 years, no rain. So if you think I got this wrong, if you don't think I got it right, that's fine. You have to apply something as the daily sacrifice 2020. Mute the mics, please. When we mute the mics. Okay. Oh, who's barking here? That one. Okay, we just muted Samsung. Okay, I'll go back. What just happened here? So again, you just gotta, let me get out of here. That's not right. There we go. Okay. You may not agree with my dates, and that's fine. Whatever you believe to be the truth, that's up to you to figure out. But this you cannot disprove. And if you do disprove, you have to disprove all 89 sabbatical jubilee years. We are in the middle, 2023 right now. The next jubilee, the seventh millennium, starts in 2045. 2020 is now behind us. Something major happened in 2020. What was it? What was the sacrifice and offering that ceased? Unless those days are cut short, has got to take place. So I'm saying that's going to be till 2033. Those are the days cut short. That leaves you either 21 years if you disbelieve what I'm saying, or 10 years if you believe what I'm saying. Judgment begins on the world starting next year. And in 2026, the two witnesses will stop the rains from falling anywhere on earth. So during this time, you need to get ready. You need to start stocking up on food. You need to stock up on water, or develop a system for collecting water at night when the dew is heavy, or you're going to die. But here's the part that we haven't talked about yet. All right. And We just don't have time. Let me see. We just don't have time. So I just climbed Mount Sinai. That's me in the red hat there. This is the rock to split in two. Jehovah God, my God, your God, he made rock. This is 80 feet tall, 20 feet thick, and solid rock in the bottom. He made water gush out of this rock. All these rocks down here are washed by that water. He also made manna appear from heaven to those who obeyed him, those who were obeying him. You've got to obey. The only way you're going to survive what's coming is if you obey. The only way your family will survive is if you get them to start to obey God. The only way any of us will survive this is if we begin to obey him. So the part that we haven't talked about is the role of the Filipino, because the Philippines has a role here to play. And I show you the scriptures in another teaching that the Philippines is going to rescue the remnant of Israel. And they're going to bring them back here to the Philippines.
Yeah, Brother Joseph, we may talk about the role of the Filipinos sometime next week, I think. So what we can do right now is if there is any questions from our listeners, then I think it's already 9:49. So we may want to have it next meeting next week. So we have to suspend it right now, and then we return back how to really understand how the sabbatical and jubilee cycle is very important in understanding the prophecy, the biblical prophecy. So let's hear from everybody. This is about time to you can open your phone or your cameras. Then any questions, it's now open. Brother Joe can can answer it. All right. None? Or anything that you want to discuss, or anything that you would like to clarify with Brother Joe?
Brother Alvin, may I humbly offer some insights regarding Brother Joe's presentation? By the way, thank you, Brother Joe, for the presentation, for repeating it. Almost like it's so useful because in repetition, likening to the Torah cycles that what we read all the time, repetition, especially the prophecy, uh, makes us learn more, and you did hit on some important, very important points today, and my favorite part is Daniel 9 too. Uh, I don't know if I have a question, but it seems like I just want to offer like an appreciation of what we've been doing so far. And when I was giving out some invitations for the June 12th event that we had in MLTC, I met one particular pastor who says there is no more, there should never be any more prophet that is existing today. Like the Bible is saying now that prophets don't exist anymore in our day. So the thing is, some people do discredit prophets when they say it's almost like some people might think, I don't know if that's occurring in their minds, but they might think that we are looking into a crystal ball, and then all of a sudden we predict some kind of an isolated event, like a volcano is going to go off in California or something like that. But it seems like I can actually confirm today that a huge part of Bible prophecy really is founded on patterns. Just what Professor Alvin was saying, patterns that are based on the Sabbaths and the Jubilee cycles and the feast days as well. So that is something that is very important to me, because at what point I didn't really understand what prophecy really meant. But it seems like something was revealed throughout this presentation, that the nature of prophecy really has something to do with the patterns, the patterns of the feast days, the Sabbaths. And if you know that, and I've read that from your book also, Brother Joe, in it's a riddle and not a command. That is one of the things that Yeshua wanted to reveal. And if he was the really the greatest prophet of all, the last great prophet, then he revealed that thing to us, that you should be studying the calendar and the Jubilee cycles, because a huge part of Bible prophecy